I'm back. All right, chapter 16, questions for study and discussion. All right, number 1. In GTAW, what type of welding machines may be used? I think they should say what type of power source is used. And we know that it requires a constant current welding machine that can produce direct current, alternating current, and high frequency. So why does AC require high frequency? Well, remember, with certain types of power sources, high frequency is used to maintain the arc. What type of current is commonly used to weld ferrous materials? What's a ferrous material? Something that contains iron. So if we're going to do that, carbon steel, stainless steels, and other ferrous metals are typically welded with DC electrode negative. In GTAW, what results can be expected with respect to heat distribution between the base metal and the electrode with DCEN versus DCP? Okay, so in DCEN, electrons flow from the electrode to the workpiece. Approximately 70% of the heat is directed towards the base metal. In DCEP, they flow from the workpiece to the electrode with about 70% of the heat. All right, what determines whether an air-cooled or water-cooled torch is used for particular welding applications? Well, air-cooled torches have a low duty cycle, and they're pretty much used on thin metals when we use amperages less than 200. Okay, torches used over 200 amps are usually water-cooled. Okay, so what should we do when we're what should we do? What should we make sure that we take care of before when we're using a water-cooled torch? We want to make sure that the water's running, that we have water, that we're checking for leaks, and there's no puncture in the return lines or anything like that. Okay. So why is it important to use the correct gas nozzle size? Okay, when we use a gas nozzle, our cup, the little pink one, it is important to use the correct size so the weld zone can be protected from the atmosphere. If the nozzle is too small, it may overheat, crack, or deteriorate. Okay, remember shrapnel. So what determines the size of a tungsten electrode that should be used for welding? So the diameter of the electrode or tungsten is determined by required welding current. Okay, so if I'm only using 10 amps, I really don't need a very big tungsten. And if I'm trying to use a lot more, maybe I need to go bigger. So what is the recommended shape of the tungsten for DCEN and for AC when we use a transformer rectifier? Okay. So when we use DCEN, we grind it to a taper, okay, and we're just going to blunt the tip. It doesn't need to be pencil sharp. And when we're going to use AC, we're going to make it hemispherical when we're using AC for aluminum and things like that. So what does a flowmeter do? Okay, so remember, regulators for GTAW are equipped with pressure gauges for measuring cylinder pressure and a flowmeter that control the gas to the torch. Okay. Some regulators also have a purge flowmeter for backing gas and trailing shields, and it's like a little another pigtail that comes off of there. Okay. We also need to remember that the flowmeter gives us the amount of flow that we need. Okay. So the machine, its function is it on or is it off? It does not dictate how much pressure or how much gas we're going to get. So we need to remember that. Okay, so when using filler metal, how should it be manipulated? This is kind of not a fair question to ask. When we use filler metal, we want to dip it into the pool. Okay, and we want to make sure that we keep it in the flow of the shielding gas. So that means you need to keep it near your torch so it doesn't oxidize, but you don't want it so close to your torch where it starts to melt off. Okay. So when is filler metal used in GTAW? Okay. So this seems kind of poopy, but we want to make sure that, of course, that we use filler metal that has the same composition. Remember, rule number 1, matching the base metal with the filler metal. Okay. And we want to make sure that we use it when we have a joint. Okay. All right, guys, as always, take care.